She never thought she'd fall for someone again. Not after that marriage. Not after learning how love can come dressed as a promise and leave like a thief in the night. People say time heals everything. But some wounds don't bleed. They whisper. They wait. They remind you every time you almost let your guard down, every time you feel a little too safe. He didn't hit her. He didn't scream. He didn't cheat. But he made her feel invisible. And that is its own kind of violence. She remembers standing in the kitchen, sunlight slicing through the blinds, wondering if anyone would notice if she disappeared. Not physically, just piece by piece. The kind of disappearing you don't see until it's too late. Until one day you don't recognize the woman in the mirror. People told her she was lucky. He had a job. He was polite. They smiled together in photos. She nodded, smiled back, said all the right things, and died quietly behind her eyes. The day she left, there was no screaming, no suitcases flying down the stairs, just silence. The kind of silence that feels like breathing for the first time after holding it for years. And she swore. She swore she would never ever be that stupid again. Love? No thank you. Dating? Don't make her laugh. Trust? Let's not even go there. Until one evening, after a long day, after too many glasses of cheap wine, a notification buzzed on her phone. A message. A face. A stranger. Nothing remarkable. He wasn't stunning. He didn't write poetry. Didn't try too hard. Didn't call her babe in the first sentence. But something about him made her pause. Just pause. And in that pause something shifted. Not much. Just enough. She didn't believe in signs. But when she met him, there were moments, tiny stupid moments, that felt different. The way he thanked the waitress and meant it. The way he didn't interrupt. The way he looked her in the eyes like she wasn't a puzzle to solve or a project to fix. Of course she was suspicious. Of course she waited for the mask to slip. They all wore masks eventually. But day after day, story after story, she couldn't find the crack. Or maybe she was afraid of what she'd see if she stopped looking. So she watched. She tested. She doubted. And somewhere along the way she began to wonder, what if this time the monster isn't hiding behind the smile? What if this time he really is who he says he is? Or worse, what if she's the one who's changed so much she wouldn't recognize love even if it stood right in front of her? She told herself it was nothing. A conversation. A curiosity. Not the beginning of anything. She even practiced the exit lines in her head. This has been nice, but I'm not ready. Sorry, I thought I could do this. It's not you. It's just not the right time. But she never used them. Instead, she found herself replying to his messages faster than she meant to, laughing at his dry humor, sharing details she hadn't told anyone in years. Not the big things. Not at first. Just the little ones. Like how she always sleeps with one foot out from under the blanket. How the smell of cinnamon reminds her of her grandmother's kitchen. How she once walked out of a movie theater because the love story felt too fake and too painful all at once. He never pushed. Never flooded her with questions. Just listened. Really listened. Sometimes he responded with a story of his own. Sometimes just a soft, I get it. It was maddening. How dare he make her feel seen without demanding anything in return? How dare he speak softly when all she was used to was sharp edges? How dare he not try to fix her? She started waiting for the mistake. For the red flag. For the moment he'd reveal himself to be just like the rest. And then it came. One evening, she asked him to meet her at a restaurant near her place. A quiet corner booth, dim lighting, soft jazz in the background. She got there early again, and watched the door, preparing herself. When he walked in, he looked exactly the same as he did in photos. But she didn't trust photos anymore. Or smiles. Or men who knew how to talk about their emotional availability. They ordered wine. She made polite conversation. He laughed at her jokes, genuinely, not the performative kind. And then it happened. The waiter brought their meals and accidentally spilled a glass of water across the table. The kind of awkward moment that can split a person wide open. Elizabeth froze. She watched him. Not what he said. What he did. And it was strange. Because he didn't react with forced patience or a fake smile. He didn't huff or make some cutting comment. He just looked at the waiter, young, clearly nervous, and said, No worries, man. Happens to the best of us. Then he helped mop up the table with a few napkins, laughed a little, joked that it gave him a good excuse to order dessert. That moment, it shouldn't have meant anything. It wasn't flowers. It wasn't some grand declaration. It was just human. But something cracked inside her. She realized she was holding her breath. She had come into this dinner armored, ready for war. And he was just sitting there, smiling at his now soggy steak like it didn't matter at all. She didn't know what to do with that. So she changed the subject. Asked about his daughter. He lit up, glowed really when he spoke about her. She watched him with quiet curiosity. How his eyes softened when he mentioned his ex-wife, but didn't dance around the pain. How he never once blamed her. How he said, "We were different people. I was angry for a long time, but I learned." That last part stayed with her. Not what he learned, that he wanted to. And maybe that's when it hit her. This man wasn't trying to impress her. He was just trying to show up. Not as a savior. Not as a replacement. But as someone who had been cracked open too. And was still willing to love with the broken parts. They said goodbye outside. The night was cool. The air smelled like rain even though it hadn't come yet. She almost reached for his hand. Almost. But instead she said, "Thanks." This was surprisingly okay. He laughed. High praise from someone who clearly expected disaster. She smirked. Didn't deny it. And just as he turned to leave, she called out, without meaning to, "Hey." He turned. Waited. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then just, "Don't make me regret this." He nodded. Didn't promise anything. Didn't say some line like, "You won't." Just looked at her with something quiet and certain in his eyes. And said, "I'll try not to." She didn't sleep that night. Not because of excitement. Not because she was imagining wedding bells or kisses in the rain. No, it was the calm that terrified her. Real peace feels unfamiliar when you've lived in quiet chaos for too long. When love has always come with a catch. A trade. A tension. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if it was possible to unlearn all the things she thought she knew about men, about herself, about what she deserved. The next day, she did something she hadn't done in years. She asked her best friend what they thought. Not the fake friend. Not the ones who said, "Just put yourself out there," while sipping wine and scrolling on their phones. No, the one who knew the whole story. The one who had picked her up from her driveway that night she left. The one who helped her pack. Even when she said she didn't need help. Her friend didn't say much. Just raised an eyebrow and asked, "Does he see you?" Sounded like a stupid question. But it landed in her chest like a stone. Did he see her? Not the funny, resilient, strong version she'd learned to perform. Not the "I'm fine, I've got this" woman the world always clapped for. The real one. The tired one. The scarred one. The woman who sometimes still cried in the shower so no one would hear. She didn't have an answer. So she started paying closer attention. Not to the big things. No, big things are easy to fake. She watched how he spoke to people who couldn't offer him anything. The woman at the dry cleaner. The man collecting carts at the grocery store. His ex-wife on the phone when his daughter forgot her backpack at school. She noticed how he never tried to win. Even in stories where he could have played the hero, he told the truth. "I didn't handle that well. I was defensive. I should have listened more." Men like that. She hadn't met many. Still, the fear didn't go away. She had built her life around not depending on anyone. Not needing anyone. Trust wasn't a door she could fling open. It was a lock she barely remembered how to turn. So she tested it. One night she told him about something small. Embarrassing. Personal. She told him she still double-checked the locks 3 times before bed. That if she didn't, she couldn't sleep. He didn't laugh. Didn't call it quirky or cute. Didn't offer to fix it or tease her. He just nodded. "I used to keep a hammer under my bed. After my divorce. Couldn't sleep without it for months." And just like that, she didn't feel weird anymore. They didn't talk about what it meant. They didn't have to. She found herself looking forward to his messages. Not because they were romantic, but because they were real. He sent photos of his dog in ridiculous sweaters. Told her about his awful attempts at cooking. ranted about the traffic like it was a personal betrayal. It wasn't sweeping. It wasn't cinematic. But it was steady. And she was starting to learn something about herself. She didn't miss the butterflies. She missed the safety. And this man, this ordinary, gentle, imperfect man, was beginning to feel like a soft place to land. Still, part of her held back. There was one thing she hadn't told him. Something big. Something that felt like a boundary line in her chest. She hadn't let him into her space. Not her home. Not yet. They always met out. Coffee shops. Parks. Restaurants. Her home felt sacred. Not just a place. A fortress. And the idea of letting a man step inside again, even just for tea, even just for a minute, made her stomach tighten. So when he asked casually one Saturday morning, "Could I swing by and drop something off?" she froze. He must have seen it on her face. Because he didn't push. He just smiled. "Or I could just leave it at your door. No pressure." And something in his voice, so unbothered, so calm, made her chest ache. Because he wasn't asking for access. He was offering respect. Later that night, she opened her front door to find a small brown paper bag. Inside, a book they'd talked about. A note scribbled in messy handwriting. "This one reminded me of you. The good parts." She sat on her steps barefoot, bag in her lap. And for the first time in years, she cried. Not because she was hurt. Not because she was scared. But because she realized she didn't feel like she was being hunted anymore. She felt chosen, but not chased. Held, but not possessed. And that was the most dangerous feeling of all. Because now she had something to lose again. The next time they met, she wore lipstick. Not much. Just a hint. Just enough to remind herself she still could. That she still wanted to. They sat on a bench by the water. The wind was sharp that day, almost rude. But neither of them moved. She liked the discomfort, the bite of it. It made everything feel more alive. He handed her a cup of coffee, exactly how she liked it. No cream. 2 sugars. She hadn't told him twice. They didn't talk about feelings. They talked about music. The terrible band he was obsessed with in college. The way she used to play the same jazz record every night in her 20s because it made her feel like someone's muse. Even when no one was watching. She laughed more than she meant to. And then, he reached out. Not her hand. Her knee. Just gently. Just a resting touch. Like punctuation in the middle of a sentence. And her body betrayed her. Every muscle, every nerve. They remembered things she had long forgotten. Heat. Permission. Wanting. It wasn't lust. It was something far more dangerous. It was hope. She didn't pull away. But she didn't lean in either. She just sat there, coffee in one hand, chaos in the other. Later that evening, he asked if he could see her again tomorrow. No pressure. Just a walk. Just time. And she should have said yes. She wanted to say yes. But the voice returned. The one that whispered, "He's going to ruin it. You're going to ruin it. People like you don't get good endings." So she said, "Maybe. I'll let you know." He didn't flinch. "All right," he said. And kissed the top of her head, softly, without asking. Like he had all the time in the world. And that was worse than begging. That night she stood in front of the mirror, towel wrapped around her, skin still damp. She studied her body like a stranger. The lines. The soft places. The stories her skin remembered even when she didn't want it to. Could this man really want this? Not the version of her from 10 years ago. Not the filtered, polite, well-dressed performance. But this. A body that had carried sorrow. A woman who sometimes still flinched in her sleep. She touched her collarbone, the one he'd brushed by accident when reaching for her coat. And she wondered, what if she let him in? All the way in. Not just her house. Not just her bed. Her heart. Her history. The things she hadn't told anyone. The darkest corners, the ugliest moments. Would he still look at her like that? Would he still place his hand on her knee without pulling it away? Or would he disappear? Like the others? Like the man who made her feel small by loving only the parts of her that didn't ask for too much. She wanted to believe. She really did. But belief is like a muscle. And hers had been out of use for far too long. The next morning she texted him. 3 words. Simple. Risky. I changed my mind. He replied within minutes. Glad you did. No emojis. No fanfare. But it was enough to make her stomach flip. He picked her up just before noon. No plans. No agenda. They just drove. Through the back roads. Windows down. Music low. And then, somewhere between the oak trees and the silence, he reached for her hand. This time she let him. And he held it like it mattered. Not like it was something to win. Not like it was fragile. But like it was hers. Still hers. Still powerful. Still worth holding. And she realized, maybe the scariest part of healing is realizing you want to be touched again. Not out of loneliness. Not out of need. But out of choice. You want to be seen. Desired. Known. Even if it breaks you again. Even if it ends. Because maybe, just maybe, the risk of falling is nothing compared to the risk of never being touched like that again. That night, she didn't wear perfume. She didn't need to pretend. She opened the door barefoot, in an old cotton shirt she used to wear on Sundays when she still believed in lazy mornings and breakfast in bed. He smiled. Not the kind of smile that asks for anything. The kind that says, "Thank you for trusting me with your space." He didn't step in right away. Just stood there, like a man who understood what it meant to be allowed inside. She hadn't planned anything. No wine. No candlelight. Just a quiet playlist and the soft hum of the refrigerator. And maybe that was why it worked. He walked into her home like someone stepping into a cathedral. Careful. Respectful. Present. She offered him tea. He asked if she had mint. She didn't. So they drank hot water and lemon and pretended it was fancy. They sat on the couch. Not touching. Not talking. Just breathing the same air. And then, he asked her a question no one ever had. What part of yourself are you still trying to forgive? Her throat closed. She wanted to laugh. To deflect. Say something clever. But she didn't. Instead she said quietly, the part that stayed too long. He didn't nod. Didn't say me too. Didn't reach for her like men do in movies when they don't know what else to say. He just listened. And that broke something open. She leaned in. He met her halfway. And when he kissed her, it wasn't soft. It was slow. Like he was reading her, not tasting her. Like he wanted to know every memory her lips still remembered. Her hands found the back of his neck. Familiar. Warm. Steady. And suddenly her body wasn't a battlefield anymore. It wasn't something to hide. It wasn't something to protect. It was a language. Confession. A way of saying I'm still here. She pulled him toward her, not out of hunger, but out of surrender. He didn't rush. Didn't push. Didn't assume. He waited. For permission. For presence. And when she gave it, truly gave it, something in her finally exhaled. They moved slowly, like people who had nothing to prove. There was no performance. No angles. No script. Just warmth. Skin. Breath. Flesh remembering it could feel safe again. Afterward they didn't talk. Didn't pretend it was normal. Didn't ruin it with definitions. She lay against his chest, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. And for the first time in years she didn't want to escape the silence. She didn't want to analyze it. Didn't want to ask, what are we? Because maybe for now, they were exactly what they needed to be. No title. No contract. Just two people in a room. Both healing. Both choosing. And maybe that was enough. Until he said it. Not loud. Not planned. Just whispered into the dark, his lips barely grazing her forehead. I don't need you to love me yet. Just don't disappear. She didn't answer. Not because she didn't want to, but because her heart was speaking in a different language. One only time could translate. And deep down, she knew she was already halfway fluent. She woke up before him. The room was still. Soft morning light leaked through the curtains, painting the walls in pale gold. His arm rested across her waist, heavy but gentle. Not a trap. Not a claim. Just wait. She stared at the ceiling, not moving. This should have felt like a win. A breakthrough. A new chapter. But instead, her mind wandered. To a different morning. A different bed. A different man. The day after her wedding. She remembered how he'd made her laugh at breakfast. How he'd kissed her shoulder while pouring coffee. How easy it was to believe the worst would never come. That memory wasn't a wound anymore. But it hadn't healed pretty. It was a scar that pulled when she stretched too far. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him, put on a robe, went to the kitchen. The kettle shook with the smallest rattle, a sound so normal it made her eyes burn. Was she really doing this? Letting someone into her space, her body, her routine. She looked down at her reflection in the kettle's curved metal, warped, almost unrecognizable. And then she heard him. Footsteps behind her. Slow, unapologetic. He didn't try to sneak up. Didn't wrap his arms around her from behind like in some predictable scene. He just leaned against the doorway. Shirtless, quiet, awake. She turned. He smiled. That same look. Warm, open, curious. And her chest clenched. Because this is where she usually ran. When things felt too good. Too calm. Too intimate. She didn't trust soft moments. She'd learned how quickly softness could snap. He walked over, took the mug from her hand, and started pouring water like he'd lived there his whole life. Then out of nowhere, "You ever think about going back?" She blinked. "Back? To who you were before him?" She froze. That question felt like a trap. But his eyes didn't say trap. They said, invitation. So she answered honestly, "I don't know who that was anymore." He nodded. "Maybe you're not supposed to go back. Maybe you're just supposed to build something new from the wreckage." She wanted to believe that. God, she did. But what if the wreckage was still alive inside her? What if it wasn't done breaking things? They sat at the kitchen table. 2 mugs. 2 histories. And for the first time she spoke about the night she left. Not the clean version. Not the one she told friends to make them feel better. The real one. The screaming. The shattered glass. The silence after. She told him how she drove for 2 hours without knowing where she was going. How she slept in her car behind a pharmacy, clutching her wedding ring in her fist so tightly it left a dent in her palm. He didn't interrupt. Didn't touch her. Just let her speak. And when she finally looked up, there were tears in his eyes. Not pity. Not discomfort. Just presence. And then he asked the one question that cracked her open. "What do you need from me to feel safe?" No man had ever asked her that. Not even the good ones. She didn't have an answer. Not yet. But the question alone felt like a hand extended in the dark. That night, she stood in the doorway as he left. No kiss. No promise. Just a look that said, "I'll be here if you want me." And something inside her shifted. 'Cause maybe it wasn't about rushing into love. Maybe it was about learning how to stop flinching when someone offers it. She watched him walk down the steps. Watched him disappear into the cool night air. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to follow, or hide, or explain. She just stood there, and let herself feel everything. All of it. The ache, the fear, the wanting, the terrifying, beautiful possibility that she might be ready, but also that she still wasn't sure. 3 days passed. She didn't call, not because she didn't want to, but because she needed the silence. Needed to see if her heart could hold steady without someone else's voice filling the empty spaces. He didn't text. Not once. And it didn't feel like punishment. Felt like respect. By the 4th day, she missed him. Not in that desperate, ache-in-the-stomach kind of way she used to feel in the old days, when she mistook obsession for affection. This was something else. She missed how he listened. How he looked at her like she was still unfolding. How his presence didn't demand a performance. She missed being allowed to be quiet without losing his attention. So she called. Simple. No pretense. "Do you want to come over tonight?" He didn't ask why it had taken 4 days. Didn't ask if she was sure. He just said, yes. And she smiled. Because she could finally admit it. She wanted to be wanted. But she didn't want to be chased. She wanted to be chosen. Slowly. Deliberately. Honestly. That night she wore nothing special. Just her skin, her softness, her readiness. They didn't sleep together. They laid side by side. Breath sinking. Hearts quiet. And for the first time she let him trace her scar. The small one on her hip. The one no lover had ever asked about. He ran his finger across it and whispered, "This one has a story." And she told it. Told him how she fell through glass trying to leave. How she didn't even feel the cut until hours later. How the blood didn't scare her. Only the silence after it. He didn't flinch. Didn't apologize on behalf of someone else. He just kissed it. Softly. Reverently. Like she was made of more than survival. That's when it hit her. She wasn't looking for someone to fix her. She wasn't even looking for someone to heal with. She was looking for someone who could witness her. Truly witness her. The damage. The strength. The quiet rage. The relentless hope. Someone who wouldn't run when she got quiet. Or loud. Or terrified. And now, maybe she had. Not a guarantee. Not a promise. Just a possibility. That was enough. She looked over at him. At the way he breathed like he belonged. At the way he hadn't tried to save her. Just stayed. Her heart beat slower. Calmer. She was still scared. But now fear didn't mean stop. It meant pay attention. To how he treated the waitress at the cafe. To how he spoke about his sister. To the way he apologized when he got something wrong. Not because he had to, but because he wanted her to feel safe. She noticed all of it. And she realized. That's how trust is built. Not in declarations. Not in flowers or grand gestures. But in moments. In patterns. In how someone behaves when they think no one is watching. She reached for his hand under the sheets. Laced her fingers into his like she had a right to. And he squeezed gently. No words. No performance. Just presence. She smiled into the dark. Maybe she'd never be the woman she was before. Maybe she didn't need to be. Because the woman lying here now, the one who had scars and breath and warmth and wanting, was finally enough. Not just for him, but for herself. And if you're still here, breathing a little deeper, maybe even feeling a little more seen, thank you. This is her love blueprint, where we don't rush healing, we don't shame the scars, and we rewrite what love can look like after everything. If Elizabeth's journey spoke to something in you, if it stirred a memory of fear, or a longing you haven't named yet, I'd love for you to share it, down in the comments, in your own words, as honestly as you can, because this isn't just a channel, it's a conversation. If there's a story you want us to explore next, a chapter of love you're still trying to make sense of, a question you've carried alone for too long, tell me. Your voice matters here. And if you haven't already, you know what to do. Click subscribe. Tap the bell, so you don't miss the next time we meet. There's more to come. More stories. More truth. More of you in the mirror. And until then, breathe. You're not broken. You're just becoming. And that is beautiful.